lovely viewers, you are most welcome to our channel Poetry Online. In this lesson, we shall be discussing the summary of the book The Blinkards by Kobina Sekyi. Kindly subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to get updates on all our new videos. Once again, let us assure you of a very interesting discussion. Get ready for this lesson. The Blinkards was written in the colonial era in 1915. It was written at a time when the people of Gold Coast, now Ghana, held European education, cultural values and standards in a very high esteem. Through education, some fancies and other dwellers of the coast had the privilege of traveling to Britain. On their arrival in Britain, these Africans encountered a clash between their native cultural values and the lifestyle of that of the white man. In the face of the test of their intelligence to the native culture, some of the Gold Coasters failed to prove themselves faithful. They counted their culture as inferior and esteemed the European culture as superior. In the course of their stay in Europe, the Africans adopted anything they were introduced to. Therefore, at their return to the Gold Coast, they despised their cultural values and heritage. They counted themselves as Western-oriented Gold Coasters. Those who did not travel with them saw their European fashion and mannerisms as noble virtues, worthy of emulation. They held these Western-oriented Gold Coasters as models of the civilized life and living. This blind imitation of the people who had imitated European culture and interpreted them wrongly affected various aspects of the life in the Gold Coast. Areas that suffered the stench of this new idealism were the native dress code, traditional marriage procedures, the speaking of local languages, and eating of local foods. The play begins with Mrs. Brofusem having just returned from England. The fact that she has been to England puts her in the forefront as a model for fashion, behavior, ethics, and conduct. She pressurizes her husband to adopt the English ways of life. She bars him from singing fancy songs, which according to her is only sung by bushmen. She flatters Mr. Brofusem with names such as Jim and Darling, while she expects him to address her as Ducky, just as it is done by Mr. Gash, who lives in Seabourn in East Coast. The I have been to England attitude of Mrs. Brofusem appears very attractive to Mr. Siba, a cocoa magnate, and others in Cape Coast. He therefore sent his daughter to Mrs. Brofusem for her to be taught the English ways of life, to make her more refined and more English. The name of the daughter of Mr. Siba is Araba Mansa. However, he changed the name to Barbara Eremintrude, a Latin name which neither Araba Mansa, Mr. Siba, nor Mrs. Brofusem could pronounce properly. He did this because of the fear of being rejected by Mrs. Brofusem. This definitely would have been the case if he had presented his daughter to Mrs. Brofusem as Araba Mansa. In Act 1, Scene 2, we find Mr. Okadu, a young man who wants to marry Miss Siba. He is very sure of being rejected if he does not learn to speak English and copy English mannerisms. He therefore went to be trained by Mr. Oyimze, a British-trained lawyer and a typical African who loves nothing but his African culture. During the garden party at Victoria Park in Cape Coast, Mrs. Brofusem, solely British adornment, greatly attracts the ladies and other Cape Coasters. Her dress code is sharply contrasted by that of Mr. Oyimze, who is in a native dress. As Mr. Oyimze talks to Mrs. Brofusem at the party, Mr. Okadu takes the opportunity to talk to Miss Siba. Accidentally, both have spotted each other but were unable to show it. Therefore, pretense was to be the tool for introduction. By coincidence, both had read an English book in which the lovers were brought together after they collided against each other, with the male picking the lady's handkerchief for her. This then becomes a premise and an example for them. Mr. Okadu deliberately falls down behind Miss Siba's chair. Mr. Okadu then expresses his joy in falling down because it has introduced them. They decided to take a walk around Victoria Park together. On the other side of the park, some Cape Coast girls are thrilled by Mrs. Brofesem's Europeanism, and they surround her to hear her speak. The remaining girls come to Mr. Oyinze because he had also been to England. He tells them the types of correct behaviors of England which are acceptable to be adopted by the African girls. They laugh at his wearing of native clothes and sandals and try to prove him the superiority of the European culture and fashion. Later, when Mr. Okadu tells Mr. Oyinze about how he got introduced to Miss Siba and how he got her consent for marriage, Mr. Oyinze warned against any untraditional marriage procedure. He then advised him to use proper channel or he would be sorry for it. After hearing about the love affair between Mr. Okadu and Miss Siba, Mrs. Brofesem went ahead to make a marriage arrangement with Mr. Siba. Mr. Siba finds the procedure of the marriage very awkward and nonsensical, but he sheepishly accepts the arrangement, all because Mrs. Brofesem tells him it is done in England. This arrangement angers Nansompa to attack Mr. Okadu. Unfortunately, this leads to her death. The fascination of the Western-oriented fancies blinds them from seeing any good in their professionals. Mr. Oyinze, a qualified medical doctor, is despised by the people of Cape Coast because they do not believe that an African can do any good in medicine. A very quick wedding arrangement is made for Okadu and Miss Siba to cover up Miss Siba's illegitimate pregnancy. The wedding arrangement is conducted by Christian minister Reverend Parson, but later annulled by the British court because it did not have the approval of the native customary laws. In the end, characters such as Mr. Siba, Mr. and Mrs. Brofesem come to the realization that the native culture, law and practices are far better and more comfortable to practice than that of the European. Thanks for watching this video. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and share this video.